pleasure to say, let's get started, ladies and gentlemen, because your next speaker, William Taylor, I call him Bill because I've known him for years. So William Taylor is going to talk to us today from a vantage point that he comes from. The way I know him is he was this kind of computer guy back in the day, and he's also been on the board of the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and I had the pleasure of serving with him. So he's had all kinds of opportunities to help impact and influence others regarding his own near-death experience and the things that he's learned from it. So he has a number of things to share with us about now and healing and sharing. So Bill, here you go.
Thank you, Debbie. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
I know where the volume control is now. Well, following Suzanne's talk, were you all there?
Yeah.
That's a tough act to follow, isn't it? I don't have bubble stories, but it's amazing. I think you'll see a lot of similarities in her stories and some of the stories I'm talking about here. So thank you for coming. And how many NDEers do we have? Good, good. And first time at the conference? A few, yeah, good. Well, thank you for being here. Well, let's see. I guess you saw that first slide. You read that, right? Okay, good. Just want you to know. Just caution you.
Read it.
Can you read it?
You read it.
You want me to read it? Okay.
Yeah.
This is two guys. I was
Not that
floating in a
one, the
tunnel
other
toward a
one.
very bright light, and then a voice told me I had to go back and finish listening to the presentation. So if you leave, then you know what might happen. Well, the conference we're talking about revolutionary experiences, the power of love and consciousness, and I've been talking for years about the power of love. And revolutionary, my first thought, well, what I want to also talk about is what, from my standpoint, are revelations from an NDE, exploring unconditional love as ultimate power. So that's where we're headed. I had an NDE in 1979, now live in Lake Worth, Florida, and if you can, send prayers down that way, because something's coming.
Yeah,
And
yes.
we're away this week, and I wish we were down there to kind of hold the
Supported it.
patches down, so if you would, appreciate it. So we're going to talk about exploring unconditional love. And when I first saw the word revolutionary on there, I thought, uh-oh, is this political? What's going on? That in the conference title. But as an adjective, revolutionary really is talking about involving or causing a complete or dramatic change. And that certainly applies to NDEers. But then also, revelation is really talking about a revealing of something surprising and previously unknown, often of divine or supernatural quality. Well, that certainly applies to NDEers. And I really consider mine more revelationary than revolutionary. But if enough NDEers are around, maybe we can affect a revolution. Right? I think we need one now. The picture on the left, I'm sure you're familiar with. The one on the right, you probably are familiar with too, or you might guess what that is. That's Saul on the road to Damascus. Right? So he's, as I understand it, he's looking for Peter to probably kill Peter. And then he has this NDE, really a very typical NDE, and from someone who is persecuting Christians, look what the NDE did to him. It turned him around, and now he became a proponent of the Christian church. He started churches all over. 13 books of the New Testament are from Paul. And if it's a testimony as to what an NDEer can do, that's quite a testimony. And we'll also talk about evolution, which evolution really is talking about expansion or development or growth. And they also throw in the dictionary advancement and progress. Well, sometimes that's debatable. Is it really advancement? But I do want to talk about expansion, and we'll talk about expansion and development. So here we are marching along. And when you think of ultimate power, or energy, it's cut off a little bit, or light, or heat, or God, what do you envision as ultimate power? When I think of ultimate power, one of the things I think about is the sun. Can you imagine a huge ball, glowing, or if this fission reaction, this fire going on for months and months, years, millions of years, And I really think of outer space or spatial kinds of things. But we're really going to be talking about, as ultimate power, unconditional love, which may be a little bit contrary to what our power, what we consider to be powerful, like a locomotive or something. But the most common characteristic of an NDE is the experience of overwhelming unconditional love. All people, almost all NDEers, when you interview them, you'll find that one of the things they mention is love. And there are other characteristics, about a dozen or so characteristics. But we're going to focus on love and a little bit on consciousness. But NDEers come back with the knowledge of the power and the vastness of this love energy, I call it. And I don't think we talk about it enough. And I thought this is a good place to talk about it. So when we're talking about the power of love, I really want to emphasize it as a power. Here's David Beckman. The Seattle IANDS publishes a newsletter, and in their current issue, there's an excerpt from his story, and he describes this love. And almost all NDE stories have descriptions of love. But he says, love is the key to all. It is the power of the universe, God's power. Love is the key power we all come here to learn to use to overcome adversities. So love is the power of the universe. It is God's power. Now, some of our methods of explanation and communicating ideas, words aren't so great, you know? So we create models and metaphors and analogies. That's the best we can do right now. If we could intuit things back and forth, that might be great. But so far, we're not so developed. Here's some quotes, and quotes are good too. Here's from Lao Tzu, and he was, what, 600 BC? And he says, at the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are. And Suzanne was talking about one of the most important things is for us to know who we are. And most people don't know really who they are. So we'll look at that. Although actually inside you do know who you are. So there's no reason for you to be here, because you already know this. Alan Watts says, what we are basically, deep, deep down, far, far in, is simply the fabric and structure of existence itself. Alan Watts has got a number of YouTube videos and books and so forth. But he's not alive now. But if you haven't heard him, listen to some of that. It's really fascinating. Dalai Lama says about unconditional love. Love is the absence of judgment. The measure of love is to love without measure. And Thornton Wilder, love is an energy which exists of itself. It is its own value. And Wayne Dyer, there is no greater power in heaven or on earth than pure unconditional love. Anita Moorjani. Everybody know Anita Moorjani? Good, okay. Because she speaks frequently at IANDS conferences. And if you have a chance, she's not here this year, but if you have a chance to hear her talk, be sure and go. She says, unconditional love's our birthright, not judgment or condemnation, and there's nothing we need to do to earn it. This is simply who and what we are. And Wayne Dyer, this one you have to think about a little bit. Fear knocked at the door, love answered, and no one was there. Do you get it? There's a continuum, okay? On one end is unconditional love. And what's the opposite of love?
Fear.
Fear. A lot of people say, oh, hate. Now, hate comes from fear, but fear is the opposite of unconditional love. So if you draw a line, when we're pure unconditional love, there is no fear, right? Which is really a fascinating point. Here's Hafiz, a Persian poet of the 1300s. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, this is back in the 1300s. And recognition of the sun and the power of the sun, it's no wonder that you know, the Egyptians, the sun god was the king god. He was the chief god, Ra. And actually, why not? The sun is what a magnificent energy source of all love, heat, light, everything. It allows things to grow. Of course, if you were in Egypt right now, it'd be about 120. We've been there 3 times. You don't want to be in Egypt right now. So really what I'm saying is, and I don't have to do the first 3 to get to the bottom one, that this love energy is the only energy. And let's look at this love energy model from that standpoint, that love is the only energy. So in the sense that there's no really highest form or most powerful or power that heals and creates. Yes, it does those things, but it is the energy, and all other energies stem from that energy. And then here's what Paul says in Romans 8, and I'm sure you've heard this before. I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from God's love, neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today nor our worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. No power in the sky above or the earth below, indeed nothing in all creation, will ever be able to separate us from the love of God. And if that doesn't give you comfort, I don't know what would. Because that's really what we seek in this life and an afterlife, whatever. We're seeking confirmation that we are loved. Google love energy art, see what you get. These are some things that popped up. And here we've got like a sun or ball in the middle. Love is energy. Pass it forward. It starts with us. And over here, love is nothing to figure out. The only, what am I saying? There is nothing to figure out. The only answer is love. Right? Love is the answer to everything. And here we've got figures in the lower right here. And you see these rays connecting everybody. And over here you see rays radiating out from chakras. And these look like hearts radiating out from the person. And in the lower left, we'll talk about this kind of thing, these, I call them threads. And we'll see these threads connecting different, all points are connected together. Like that one in here. All the points are connected together, all points. But in all of these, we see rays or threads or energy coming out. You know where this is? You know where that basilica? Sacré-Cœur. Yeah. Which means Sacred Heart, right? Okay, I've been there many times, and I was back there again after my NDE. The first time after the NDE, and I decided just to sit in the pew and just to observe things. And I'm sitting in the pew, looking up at this huge mosaic on the top, and realizing, oh my gosh, how come I did not see this before? Look at the rays coming out from the heart. How could I not have seen that? And I couldn't understand. I understood then what I had missed before, that this energy is pouring from the heart of Jesus, just radiating out. And I sat there and watched it. And you're not supposed to take pictures. That's off the internet. But I went and got a postcard and took it home with me. But I'd been there before. How could I not have seen those rays? What energy and what power is radiating from the heart? So then I thought, well, can this love energy model respond to questions like, where do we come from? Who are we? Why are we here? And where are we going when we die? Well, in my NDE, you think, well, we've been to the other side. We know a lot of information. And I know where I'm going when I die, all right? And when I was over there, the extreme love that I felt and acceptance, I knew, well, this is home. And if that's home, then that's where I came from. And then who are we? I also could see myself on the other side as just love energy. So now I could answer those 3 questions. But this 4th one, why are we here, is a little harder to to come up with. There are other questions too that we could ask. I don't have answers for these, at least not in this love energy model, and maybe it could yet, but how did this all begin? And is there such a thing as beginning? And how does it end? And is there such a thing as ending? Maybe not. I don't answer those. You can answer those. You have to think in here. I encourage you. And this is just a model. And it's just created up. And it's a model to try to explain things. But yes, you need to create your own model if you have such questions. Oh yes, there's another newly discovered form of love. Well, my NDE, I had a cardiac arrest in 1979. That was 40 years ago. 40 years ago. And it took, 12 years before I never had talked about this NDE until in 1993. It was 14 years later. And I came to the IANDS conference in St. Louis. And it was the first time I'd had a chance to talk to other NDEers. I didn't know I was crazy. I didn't think I was crazy, but it's interesting, and I encourage you to do things on your own, like a pioneer. I knew no one at the conference. I knew nothing. I went by myself, and serendipitous things happened all that whole weekend, which never happened to me. I'm a computer geek, and things like that don't happen. In any event, my heart stopped 3 times, it was revived, I had a seizure. I want to describe the process of dying. I think that's kind of interesting. I didn't have a tunnel. I didn't experience a tunnel like many people do. It was a sliding board for me. But it was still a dark hole. And I remember as I got weaker, and you get weak very quickly when your heart stops. You pass out within seconds.
Really?
Yeah, I can tell you that. My ears would start to ring, and about a second or two after they ring, bang, you're gone. And that happened the first week during this heart episode. I was in and out of consciousness all the time. And at one of the times, anyhow, I was trying to hold on, like a sliding board. You got the handles there. I'm trying to hold on because I didn't want to go into that black hole. And it got too much to hold on. You just get so weak. And whoosh, I went down through that black hole. And I was thinking as I was going down through it, I thought, I don't know where I'm going, but it's out of my hands now.
Yeah.
And suddenly, I find myself out in space. I didn't have my cell phone with me to take a picture. They didn't have cell phones in '79. But I'm looking back on the universe, and just in awe. And my thoughts then were, wow, I'm still here. I can still see. I can still think, And as I began to look farther and farther, just longer into this, I didn't see anything behind me. And yet, when I say see, I had no eyes. And here I'm in on another side, looking back into a physical side. And I began to see there were threads, I called them threads, connecting everything to everything else. And I could see then, wow, these things are connected to me. I'm connected to everything. And I'm on the other side. So how can I be on the other side, and yet threads are connecting me to all of these objects? And it's so validating and reassuring when I've talked to other NDEers over the years, and they too have been on the other side. And I have some of the videos of them talking about being out in space. And it's not uncommon, I guess, that we're out in space.
What do you mean the other side?
Well, the other side, I call the other side heaven.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other realm.
The other realm.
Okay.
The other side, yeah. That's what I call it. But like Suzanne was saying, we're all one. It's really all the same. So these threads, I want to talk a little bit about these threads. But can you imagine the connections of everything to everything else? Everything is connected to everything else? And what is this energy that's connecting all these things? It's love. It's love. Energy connects all these things together. And oneness is created across all dimensions in this connectedness. It's like a huge, beautiful love machine, this universe of love connections. There's nothing that is out of place. There's nothing here by accident. There's nothing here that's not supposed to be here. And I guess I remember thinking, how else could it be? And I remember when out there looking back at the universe, thinking, wow, it's all so simple. It's all so simple. So this is how it works. And from that, I would say, truth is simplicity. You can't have something that's true that's complex. Truth is simple. And if somebody tries to say it's something complex and says that's the truth, now it's simpleness. It's just easy simpleness. And it's all free. But all energy is connected through these threads of love. And every particle of me is connected to every particle in the physical universe. I put the S in there because quantum physics says we may have an infinite number of universes. Okay, I'll go with that. Doesn't matter. We're connected to everything anyhow. And plus all things in all other non-physical dimensions. So yeah, if you have other sides or other heavens or however you build it, we're still connected. And this is an interesting thought you can ponder. In our connectedness to everything, we are at the same time both the smallest, a single point, and the largest, all points. So we're both, at the same time, we're both the very smallest part of all of the universes and everything. And at the same time, we're all of it at once. I don't know what that means, but you can think of it. Oh yes, and there's another explanation of the threads. So names for this energy. You might call this love energy God, or God's love, creator, source, great spirit, life force. Name it what you want. I'd name it love energy because when you use God or God's love, it's too many connotations to that, and it's undefined. But I just refer to it as God's love. And another thing you might call it, which I don't know. What do you think if you call it dark? Is that dark energy? Other engineers have been out there. Do you think that's the dark energy that physicists talk about? Oh. So what is the nature? Here's a little mini revelation. I was trying to figure out as the years went by, what is the nature of this love energy? I'm trying to describe it. I'm trying to get a handle on it. I guess it started when in Sunday school we're taught that this God of ours knows all, is all-powerful, lacks nothing. It's the supreme being. And yet, that's not what I encountered. If that's true, then why does this time-space dimension have to exist? What are we doing? In other words, what are we doing here that's satisfying the need for our being here? Why did God create us? Right? So I couldn't explain that with that. So what I threw out to the universe, there's a little book called U-Mail. So if you have a question, throw it out to the universe and wait for an answer. So I threw that out to the universe and I waited, and a couple of months later, it came back as when waking up. And it was almost verbal, almost audible. And the answer was, love does not know fear. And my first reaction was, so? I knew that was the answer, but I wanted to know what was God's intention on creating us. But if you think about it, what can you do if you're fearless? So if love does not know fear, I came up with the very sort of a mini revelation. The very nature of this love energy is expansive. It's to expand. It's fearless. It can expand dimensionally. It's limitless. Expand forever. Right? Continuously. Why does it expand? It expands to flow into it. Like the ocean is flowing across the ocean floor, and there are cracks in the ocean floor, and it fills those cracks. And that's what love energy does. It fills the void. So it's expanding. Thomas Millen Benedict was speaking at IANDS conference a few years ago, and he had a question. What is it about this God of ours? He is so obsessed with memory. And I was thinking, whoa, I never thought of memory. Memory fits in this model. What's memory have to do with this? What is it about remembering everything? And we call this the Book of Knowledge or the Akashic Records. What is it about memory? How does memory fit into this model? Well, when you think about it, and you have to, I'm slow, it took me weeks or months. Anyhow, finally I got it. Okay, you cannot have expansion without memory. So you need the memory, and you need to memorize everything. So you need to record it all. And that's recorded in this, there's the library, there it is, the Akashic Records.
Yeah.
It's all there. I don't know where that library is, but isn't that a gorgeous library? My father was a librarian, my mother was a librarian, my ex was a librarian, my aunt was a librarian. And I loved libraries, but I didn't want to work there. But, anyhow, Google Akashic Records, and you'll find them. A lot of people encounter the Akashic Records in their NDEs. Here's Edgar Mitchell. He was Apollo 14, the 6th astronaut on the moon. He started IANDS, I-O-N-S, and oftentimes when I was on the board at IANDS, people would call up, oh, talk about IANDS. No, we're IANDS, not IANDS. But that was the Institute of Noetic Sciences that Edgar started. And I'm not sure if they're very active anymore.
Yes, they are.
Are they still?
Yeah,
Good.
they are.
Good. Anyhow, he said the ancients had a term in the mystical tradition called the Akashic Record, which was suggestive that nature didn't lose its experience, that the information accumulated was available forever. So let's talk about this evolution process. Well, love energy, I think, needs to expand step by step. If it's going to fill the void, one thing about filling the void, once it fills the crack or the void, it never has to, for that particular situation, it never has to repeat it. And that's why memory is important, because it needs to know if it's filled that already, if it's done it. If it's done it, it never has to be repeated. Otherwise, what could you wind up with? A Groundhog Day syndrome. And if you do that, and love energy is just filling voids again and again and again and doing it over, you don't have expansion. So it's got to know whether it's done something. So step by step, and it eventually will fill all the voids. Okay? It's got an infinite amount of time. We're part of that process. All right? And all possibilities can be created. It needs to explore all possibilities. I call it exploring. I'm not sure what an exact word would be, or a better word. But love energy is exploring all possibilities. And one interesting way it's exploring, you can almost answer questions with that. You can say, why is there a veil? Why is there a veil? Why aren't we aligned with the other side like other peoples, like Jesus or Muhammad or Buddha? Why aren't all of us that way? You could say that love energy is exploring a dimension or a level of exploring the level of not knowing itself or unknowing. In other words, we're here not knowing that we're connected. And we're creating that Akashic record, that exploration. What is it, as if that energy says, I'm going to throw myself out there. Now you're separate. You're acting as if separate from me. So it's exploring a dimension or a level of separation from self. Anyhow, we have choices, all right? And it could say, I'm exploring the dimension or the level of, what if I give individuals choices? Then they can make choices not knowing it's me making the choice. They're making the choice on their own. So what a whole area to be explored. Now I see we have two choices. We can assist this evolution, we can assist love energy expanding, or we can resist love energy expanding. We can create fear. We can become a terrorist. Love energy, in a sense, doesn't really care it will, it is the energy and it is the power. So eventually it will come. Love, heaven will come to earth. That looks like the ocean, but you're wrong. That's a metaphor. Okay, it's a metaphor for love energy, all right? That's God's love, the ocean of God's love. And then you can say, what are we? Okay, the metaphor for us is a drop from that ocean, or 2 drops, doesn't matter. We're a portion of that ocean at our core. So I started calling it our core, okay? So here's our core. It's a little green, that's not algae. It just happens to be green. So here's love energy, you could call it soul or spirit or essence. We have an unlimited supply of love in our core. We're a drop of love. And love is not, our quantity of love is not like an economic model, all right? If I give some of that away, actually, you see, you can't use the word away, because you can give love forever and never have any less, right? You can give it away forever and never have any less. Right? You don't even have to receive love in order to give love. Many people say, oh, I'm mean because nobody ever loved me. Well, that's an excuse, but you can overcome that, you know. Suck it up, as they say. Get over it. But we have an unlimited supply. We're always connected. We're one with all, and we're eternal. You cannot extinguish. We cannot extinguish that core. There are other levels. I call them levels, but there are other areas around our core, and those even though there are areas where love energy isn't fully present, right? You might call them ego. We won't go into all those things, but let's look at what is not at our core. There's no ego there, no fear, no pain, no disease. And it's interesting, we do a retreat up over in St. Louis every year. There'll be one in May. I've got flyers on it for into ears. And we were at the retreat, and one night I thought, whoa, you know, there are no such thing as pronouns. Isn't that interesting? Anyhow, at your core, there is no such thing as I or you or we or me. We're all one, right? There's no karma, time, or space. There is time in a sense because things happen, but you can go forwards and backwards. So the Akashic records have all the information from the past, and you can also, it's like a line or a thread. In one direction is the past, and the other direction is the future, and this is where, in a time-space dimension, we are in the middle. But you can see that thread on the other side. So you can see sort of a future. But if somebody makes a change, they can make a decision, all of a sudden that whole line shifts. Everything shifts. And I don't quite fully understand it, but I think even the past changes. So the whole line stays straight, if you can imagine it, and then it changes. So the future, the past, everything changes, rotating on that present choice. So there's no need for belief or faith or hope at this core, or wishes or wants or needs. And there's no good or bad, success or failure, right or wrong, fair or unfair, winning, losing, better, worse. Then what is at the core? What is at our core? It's unconditional love. It's energy. It's ecstatic joy. It's oneness. It's completeness. It's perfection. A few words about consciousness, since the conference talks about that. Here's the problem of consciousness. I thought this described it pretty well. You've got neurons, and you've got over here consciousness. And then in the middle it says magic. And then the student's saying, can we see that trick again, please? So that's the question. Where does this come from? And nobody seems to know. So I don't want to spend any time on it because we don't know what we're talking about. But my thought was, these threads of unconditional love, through these threads connecting us to all things and all dimensions, is this the source of our consciousness? There's Oliver Burkeman, and if you Google Mystery of Consciousness, there's an article recently, and he talks about anything at all could be conscious, providing that the information it contains is sufficiently interconnected and organized. According to Christoph Koch and Giuliano Tonani, the human brain certainly fits the bill. So do the brains of cats and dogs. But in principle, the same might apply to the internet, or a smartphone, or a thermostat. What about rocks? It could apply to anything. There's information, and it's sufficiently interconnected and organized. And through these threads, you know, why can't that be sort of our connection or our source? That's the stream of consciousness. There's another mini revelation. I was walking down the street, I don't remember the city, and this thought pops into my, I don't know, brain, I guess, I don't have a mind. It pops into my brain, and I stop, and I verbally say, oh, I get it. I get it. My being here is not about me. My being here is not about me. And so, from that I say, our being here alive on this earth, the reason we're here primarily is not about us. It's not about our ego. It's not about our learning or our growth. And it's not about our becoming more spiritual. Isn't that interesting? Because all of this stuff we're talking about, we're here to learn, we're here to grow. That's a different level. But I see that our real core reason for being here, well, we are already all that is. We are perfection. We are pure love at our core. What are we here for? We're here to assist the expansion of love energy on Earth and in the universe. And that's, I see, as what our primary goal is, to be here. We're to assist heaven coming to Earth, if you will. There's nothing else you need to do. We don't have to achieve anything. We don't have to earn a certain amount of money. We don't have to have a certain type of job. It doesn't really matter. We can be handicapped. We can be a vegetable. It doesn't matter. We're just here to assist that expansion of love energy. And then I'll throw this question at you. I don't know the answer. But think about it. By assisting the creation of heaven on earth, how are we interacting with heaven itself? What part of creating heaven are we doing? We're doing stuff here. Things we do here we can't do in heaven. That's why we're here. We certainly grow the Akashic records, but we're here to bring that love here. So looking at it from heaven's point of view, take a look at that and let me know your answer. So, heaven will come to earth, I say. It will happen. Love is the energy. Continually in process. It does not matter, sooner or later. There's plenty of time. You could say, what can you do? Well, you are pure, unconditional love, fearless and powerful. At your core, you are fearless and powerful. And from your core perspective, it's unlimited as to what you can do. Look what Paul did. Look what other great leaders have done. The Egyptians used to put a future pharaoh they would practice with slaves. They put him in a coffin, if you will, and seal it and see how long it took before they died. Then they'd put a pharaoh in there, and just before he died, they'd open the coffin. They'd give him an NDE. This is evidently documented, that they would give him an NDE because leaders needed NDEs. Think we could try that today?
A lot of people would like to.
Yes. Okay, so I suggest create your own model. Keep asking questions. If you have other questions, keep asking them. Find your own words and answers and model. And it's fun to build it. It was fun for me. Observe your ego. Ego, I see, creates separation. Okay? So for heaven to come to earth, the question is, will all ego have to disappear? It might. It might. But remember, there is no failure, right? And you are forever loved unconditionally. If it's one thing you remember from today, we do this retreat, as I said, and one of the things we do in the retreat, we fill out what we call our pearls of wisdom. So we write down little short messages. And one person wrote down, don't waste your life thinking you are not loved. Don't waste your life thinking you are not loved. Remember that if you remember nothing else. You are loved unconditionally. Oh yes, and rose quartz. Rose quartz, anybody know rose quartz? Okay, rose quartz, compassion, love, kindness, aligns consciousness with divine love, compassion, mercy, tolerance, amplifies feelings of unconditional love, good for grief and loss, love loss, and as a plus, it aids in attracting your soulmate. I don't think the bookstore has any, do they? I don't know. Anyhow, grab yourself a piece of rose quartz and assist this expansion of love energy by being who you are, the presence of love. Remember, love eliminates fear. And if we all do that, maybe we'll one day, eventually, if we live long enough, see the light of heaven come to this earth. Thank you.
Beautiful.
And we've got time for questions. Yes.
Quick comment on referred
Can you
to.
pass the mic to the...
Oh.
Yeah, speak right into it.
Just a quick comment. You referred to Christoph Koch and Julie Latononi, and that's referring to panpsychism, that there's total consciousness at every level of. What I don't like about it is it's still physical, so it's part of the physical thinking. So Bernardo Castro has just written a book called The Idea of the World. It's called Ontological Idealism. In fact, Evan did an endorsement of his book. It was just published. I think it's a much better model for the thinking side of this equation.
Good.
What's the name?
The Idea of the World.
Say it again. Say it again.
The Idea of the World by Bernardo Castro.
Good.
Do you
Thank
need
you.
an answer?
No, that's all right. It's just a comment. Thank you.
I just had a question. I loved what you said about you can't have expansion without memory. And I feel like so many of us, well, I'll speak for myself, I get so stuck on my past experiences and like carrying a bag of garbage around with me, and I just want to be in the present moment. But that idea that you can't have expansion without memory is just like, it just kind of went on my brain. So I would just love, I don't know if you can say any more, I don't really have a question, but just, wow, that was a really new thought for me. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good. It's interesting how some of these things, you think somebody will say something like at that conference, and I know that had to be part of this model because it's very important. How can I explain this God wanting to save all these memories? And but yeah, it's an experience, and that's okay. Yeah, there's something I want to mention before too is Ann Ellis is in the back here in her book Revelations of Profound Love. If you're looking for like words of other indie ears, it's a great book. It's in the bookstore. I don't get a royalty, do I?
It's not the
It's a great
bookstore.
book. It's got lots of experiences in it, and check that out because
You
it's
have
so
to
much
see
fun.
me if you want one, or go to Amazon.
Okay. What other questions? Yes.
Thank you, Bill. That was a great presentation. How can we interact with narcissism, sociopathy, psychopathy? Because that, to me, feels like, at least intellectually, the opposite of love. And I had it. My wife and I recently went to the Himalayas to a yoga and meditation retreat, and our teacher so we're all liberal Democrats, excuse me, I'm not trying to get political, but he said, you know who my master teacher is? And I said, who? And he said, Donald Trump. And he said, he's the greatest gift to me in my evolution. And I thought, wow, I think he's my master teacher too. But my point is do you have any comment about that kind of use of energy coming from a person who's filled with perfect unconditional love at his core, but who may be, not him, forget about him, but who plays and thrives on fear and division and divisiveness? Is there a way we can work with that within our own space, or internally or externally?
Great question, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that's, in a sense, that's our challenge. Right? And you first got to know who you are. So you're going to have to, because love eliminates the fear. It eliminates it. I raised 2 teenage daughters alone, and you talk about, you know, I had a tough little kid, and you just, you know, at the time, I couldn't remember back when I wasn't called lots of names. And eventually, I don't hear them. I mean, it's been many, 10, 20 years now, but you know, you don't hear them anymore. It takes patience, I find, and you just keep pouring love into it. Heaven will come to earth. It will get here. And just keep pouring love to those people. I don't know what else you can do. But that's the power.
Thank you for that. Just one more quick comment, and I can't remember which country it was, but I read an article, I don't even know if it doesn't even matter to me if it's true. I think it was a Nordic country where they took, I think they were nonviolent criminals, and they would put them on a pedestal in the center of town, and they would all walk up to them and tell them something good about them. And I thought, I almost wonder if they were loving them well.
Wow.
That's not a real term, but
Make it a turn.
Yeah, great try. Yeah, try it.
URL.
See if we can we get some of these people to put themselves on pedestals.
Just a real quick question, if you could expound on, you said there are things we can do here that we can't do in heaven. So what would those things be?
Everything. Yeah. Everything we do here. Let's see.
Making love.
Yeah.
Physically.
Yeah.
Walking our dog.
Everything we do here we can't do in heaven.
It's
We're
an
still
explication
connected.
of the inner life. It's an explication of the inner being, right?
Right.
The inner being can't do anything.
Doesn't have
Pure
a physical.
potential.
Yeah, it's
All of this
Right.
is the expression. It's a drama, a symphony, a movie, a play, a video game.
right. But at our core, we're that pure
2
love.
minutes.
At our core, we're that pure love. So that is our energy,
Yep.
and that's our only energy.
Pure essence.
So use that. That we can. That is on both sides. But other things besides love are not. So we're love energy's exploration into the physical, and everything else is too. The animals, the rock, everything is an exploration of love energy into this dimension, and even things you can't imagine.
Right.
But yeah, it's a challenge for us. That's why.
Regarding the Akashic Records, could you say, maybe for those of us that would like to access it, how to access it?
Are there healers here who do Akashic record healing?
Yeah.
Talk to this lady.
Yeah. I use it for my business.
I don't mean to say to go to someone that does. I mean, how do we do it for ourselves?
You can
There are books.
take a
Meditation.
class. No, you can take a class that'll give you access, and everyone can get into their records.
Yeah, they're.
And
yeah.
help others with theirs.
And the doorway is through meditation. You have to go within, make that inner connection. You can ask your questions and then you'll get answers.
Yeah. Explore that. I'm not an expert in
I'll
that.
keep you in.
Other questions? We'll close. Okay. Thank you so much for coming.
Bill